Um, so Alfred Airbus, uh, uh, and a Russian scientist, uh, he devised something called suction caps. Okay, it is more like a in a modern days uh, contact lens with a mirror embedded on that. Okay, so on the right hand panel, what you see the kind of apparatus Airbus used, which had uh, an emitter and one receiver of light. Okay, and subject used to sit, put their chin at the middle. I don't have pointer, but just to uh, trying to make you understand that the rightmost panel where you see that the subject sits at the middle, put their chin there on the chin rest, and you can see two uh, beam sort of thing. One is the emitter, another is the receiver. So whenever subject moved their eyes, the eyes got reflected from the mirror embedded on that contact lens, what he called suction caps, and that reflected light was captured by the receiver, and the trace was recorded on some kind of celluloid film. Go to the next, please. Now, he was the first to establish the correlation between the fixations or the gaze points and the interest of the subjects. So here was showed that when different people viewed the same painting, the painting he used called the unexpected visitor that you see here actually. You can find this picture in different textbooks as well. The pattern of the eye movement was similar but not identical. Okay. And he asked different questions while his subject was observing this painting. Go to the next slide, please. Uh, for example, here he asked his subject, "What do you think the ages of the characters in the painting?" Now, when he asked about their age, you can see that the observer uh, looked at the faces of the characters in the painting. Okay, but when he changed the question that what do you think is their purchase abilities? And then the observer started looking at their uh, dresses. Okay, who is wearing more expensive dresses? Now that shows that the eye movements are goal driven. These are not so eye movements are not haphazard, not random. Okay, so our our the way we look at things depends on what we want to look at. Okay, so he first proposed that the different objectives actually gives rise to different patterns of fixation or different patterns of scan path. Next slide, please. Now from there are different kind of uh, technique techniques were used to correctly record eye movement, and one of the challenge to record eye movement is that it's very difficult to keep your subject uh, kind of still for longer time. So they will tend to move their head, they tend to lean forward and backward, and then you easily can lose the gaze position. So David Robinson, who was by training an electrical engineer, he devised an apparatus which we call scleral coil, and which have been in use for many years. Um, so that scleral coil, as you can see here, it's a ring. It's kind of conducting wire in form of coil, which is placed on the eye of a subject here, and with that coil placed on their eyes, the subjects were put into a magnetic field, as you can see on the right hand side. Okay, so that cube kind of thing that what you see here, uh, that creates a magnetic field. So whenever subject move their eyes, that circular coil that cut through some magnetic force field. Okay, now using the dynamo mechanism, that when a coil actually rotates within a magnetic field, it generates current. Okay, so David Robinson was able to record precisely the eye position. Yeah. Go to the next slide, please.
So your audio is not coming through. It's very faint.
Really? Uh, is it better now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you want me to repeat the same slide? Or it is okay? Okay, so what I was telling you
No,
in case, yeah. Shall I go ahead?
it'd be great if you could repeat the slide. Yeah.
Okay, okay. Yeah, so in this slide, what I was telling you that it's a kind of technique which was developed by David Robinson, and more than human people have used this, researchers use this technique for studying eye movement in monkeys, like during this in vivo physiology experiment. So how this scleral coil work is that you see a coil sort of thing which is placed on the sclera, or the white part of the eyes, as you can see on the left panel. Okay, now with that coil placed on the sclera, the subject were asked to sit in that magnetic field. Okay, that box, that cube-shaped box, as you can see here. Now, within that magnetic field, when subject moved their eyes, that circular coil cut through some magnetic lines of force. So, using that, fundamentals of electrical uh, engineering, he was able to, using the dynamo principle, he was able to, record electricity or electric current generated due to the rotation of the coil in a magnetic field. Is it clear to you? So whenever you rotate a a coil of uh, conducting wire in a magnetic field, it will generate some current, and that is how dynamo works. Okay, and there is the same mechanism here. So whenever subject move their eyes, that scleral coil generated uh, some current, and he calibrated that current to understand the eye position. Okay, and that gives very precise eye position. Anyway, next slide, please. Uh, another technique for recording eye position is electrooculography. Now there is some kind of potential difference between the front and the back side of the eye. So whenever we move our eyes, that potential changes, and you can actually record that potential by putting some probes around the eye, and that is what we call electrooculogram. Next slide, please. Another techniques that people used in early days is the Purkinje eye tracker. So when we illuminate eyes using a source of light, there will be four. It's called Purkinje image. It's like reflection, as you can see at the middle panel. Now, Purkinje, he devised a technique to trap those uh, images to find out eye position in 3 dimension. Okay, but the machine itself is very cumbersome. So although many lab used that for many years, but it lost its popularity over the time. Yeah, next slide, please. Now, in the modern days, the kind of technique that we use to track gaze position is image based, okay, or video based, you can think of. Now, the advantage of human eye is that the the colored iris is placed on white sclera. Okay, so there is a visible white area which we call sclera. That makes it very easier to understand the gaze direction. Okay, unlike as you can see the picture of an eye of a gorilla. Okay, here it's very different. It's very difficult to distinguish between the pupil and the sclera. Okay. Anyway, go to the next slide, please. Now, this is kind of fundamental technique, that fundamental mechanism behind this image-based eye gaze tracking technology. So, because in most of the experiment requires you to study eye position in dark, we use infrared illuminator. Infrared meaning which is beyond uh, the range of the visible light. The frequency is uh, is is beyond that visible range, which is between the red and the violet. Like we do not see infrared and neither we see ultraviolet uh, light, right? So in the dark, you can actually illuminate eyes using this infrared illuminator, and the camera has some kind of filter that uses this frequency range of illumination to capture the eye position. Now, once you have a picture of the eye, there are some image processing software already embedded there that uh, that finds the edges between the sclera and the uh, pupil, okay, the cornea. Uh, so and so once you identify that circular uh, cornea and the iris, that the age of the iris in the sclera, it is easy to find out the moving part of the eyes, right? Uh, so what our eye tracker does, it find using some image processing software, it isolates the cornea and the pupil from the sclera, that white part, and track the movement of that the dark pupil. Can I go to the next slide, please? So these are the steps for eye gaze tracking. The first step is image acquisition, that is to get a bright sclera and the dark pupil. Then the image processing software that runs behind, and you were not aware of that, that does the filtering, noise reduction, thresholding, etc. Then that software does some kind of feature estimation, okay, based on some characteristic of eye movement already known. Okay, so it estimates the center of the pupil and the corneal reflection. I'll show you a few slides, either picture or the movie, where you can see the crosshair, the software put on the middle of the pupil and on the bright corneal reflection. The fourth stage is for estimation of the eye gaze, and finally you get a data estimation to know the position of the eye or the position of the gaze in 2 dimension. Now, one more thing I just wanted to tell you, that in normal cases, our eye movements are conjugate, meaning if you track one eye, that will give you the idea of the movement of the other eye as well. So usually, most of the commercially available eye trackers are monocular, but there are also some binocular eye tracker as well. So I'll show you some picture of those kind of eye tracker in the next few slides. Yeah, next slide, please. Here it is. So you can see the upper panel shows two different types of monocular eye tracker. One is desktop type eye tracker, another is head mount type eye tracker. In the lower panel, you see binocular eye tracker. Again, one type is called desktop, another is head mount. Now, the advantage of head mount is that you can use your subject freely moving On the other hand, for the desktop kind eye tracker, you must have your subject having their head uh, fixed as much as possible. Okay, so you ideally use a head chin rest like the lady you can see in the picture on the upper left corner, sitting right in front of the camera, putting her chin on a chin rest while having her forehead, has support uh, there in the head chin rest. Next slide, please. There are many kinds of eye tracker available nowadays, and based on this kind of infrared video-based eye tracker, eye tracking technology. These are a few common or popular sort of eye tracker you can think of, and their price has a very wide range. I mean, starting from in Indian rupees, if you say 2 to 3 lakhs to up to 50 lakhs, you can think of any amount you pay. And uh, the first two are in that expensive range probably. On the other hand, the eye scan, smart eye, they are sort of intermediate price range. Foxy from Purple Gaze is actually startup company, but they're doing good. And this Foxy, Pupil Lab, these are few brands which you can actually, which are affordable. Yeah. Based on your requirement, you go for a particular brand, but when you are buying an eye tracker, you must also consider some of the technical specification. And obviously, more you pay, you get a better precision and everything. Uh, the first thing is that sampling rate. It can so your eye tracker may have different uh, sampling rates starting from 60 hertz, 120 to 50, 500, 1000. Even it can go up to 2000 hertz. But thing is that less than 60 hertz will not be of great use, and going beyond 1000 hertz probably is a extravagant engine. You do not need more than 1000 hertz even to study microseconds. Gaze accuracy, that tells you that where you are looking at and how accurately the eye tracker can get that coordinate. Okay, it should be less than half a degree. Gaze spatial resolution means how precisely your eye tracker can distinguish between two gaze points, which should be ideally less than 0.1 degree. Then the operational distance, how far you can sit from the or your subject can sit from the eye tracker. It should have a pretty large range. Okay, so that's determined by the focal length of the eye tracker lens. Ideally, it should be 50 to 85 centimeter. Okay, so you can put your subject from 50 to 85 centimeter from the eye tracker, and you should get a nice picture of the eye. Tracking area, that is on the visual space, how much you can track, uh, or your eye tracker can track. PC interface, different eye tracker has a different interfacing technique. It could be USB or the COM port, that is a serial port, or maybe conventional BNC cable type, analog. Blink recovery time, uh, ideally it should be around 4 millisecond or less. That means a subject time to time they blink. You cannot uh, ask your subject to keep your eyes open, wide open, throughout the training session, throughout the recording session. So, once they blink, how much time your eye tracker takes to get back the correct position of the eyes. Okay, the quicker is better. System latency. Now, after recording, after identifying the gaze position, how much time that eye tracker takes to register that value to the computer. Okay, um, it should not be more than 8 milliseconds. Okay, Uh, and so as you can see here, this 4 millisecond and 250 hertz, 8 millisecond and 250 hertz. So that tells you that as the sampling rate increases, this delay will also decrease. Okay. So if you are using 1000 hertz eye tracker, then this delay, this latency will actually goes down to 1 to 2 milliseconds. Screen size that you can use to display your stimulus, different technologies nowadays, as I said, that the technology distinguish the dark pupil on the white sclera. These are non-invasive technique. Remote control. Many eye tracker, they provide this facility that you can remotely tilt, pan, or focus the eye camera. Okay. Many other brand, they have fixed focal length and fixed, kind of angle of their eye camera. Okay. Data stream, that means the data that your system continuously record over the time, that should have provision to timestamp, meaning whenever some important event happen, that the time of happening that event should be registered. For example, says, fixation onset, target onset. These are the important event, and that event should be time stamped along with the gaze position, so that when you look back at your data, you should know when the stimulus was on, where the subject was looking at. Yeah. How much time do we have? 15 minutes?
Yes, sir. We'll take a few questions, so like it would be
Okay.
better if we could finish within the next 5-10 minutes.
Okay. Okay. I'll try. All right. So these are few uh, diagrams that shows that how your eye tracker should be oriented directly towards the eyes. Go to the next slide, please. Yeah, and it shows that you must have a good eye image to before you start recording. Next slide, please. Can you play the movie? Now here, that was I was telling you that you can see two cross here. One is at the middle of the pupil, and the other cross here is placed on the bright spot on the cornea, and that is the corneal reflection. Okay, the light that falls on the eye, a major part of it actually get reflected from the cornea. Okay, so that uh, so the eye tracker basically find out the pupil and the corneal reflection. Next slide, please. Yeah, next, not this one. All right. So in this movie, what you see here, that that the camera, that the eye tracker is being calibrated. Now the calibration means you need to teach your eye tracker that where the subject is looking at. So what we do, we actually fix 9 landmark point, and we ask subject to look at uh, those point one by one. Okay, and we registered those eye location. That means we tell our eye tracker that when a subject is looking, say upward at the right corner, his eye would look like this. And once you teach your eye tracker 9 landmark location, and then it can actually interpolate all other points within that visual field. Yeah, next slide, please. Yeah, you can read the text, means this is what I just said, that teaching the computer where the subjects are looking at. Okay, you can skip this one, this slide. You don't have to show. Yeah, so after you calibrate, you can start your recording session. And here is a small clipping. Here you can see the subject is doing some kind of task. It's called automatic inhibition, subliminal. Uh, stopping. Okay. You can skip that as well, no problem. Yeah, there are different types of eye movement: saccade, smooth pursuit, vergence, nystagmus, and we are mostly focused on saccadic eye movement, which are rapid eye movement that moves your eyes from one point to another point. Go to the next slide, please. This is the kind of uh, eye position that you would or the change in eye position that you will observe in your data. Uh, so because eye tracker actually record eye position in vertical and horizontal orientation. So these two on the left panel, what you see the saccadic eye movement, where you see this horizontal and vertical two traces are change how they are changing when subject make an eye movement. On the right panel, you see smooth pursuit where subject keep their eyes on the moving object. Go to the next slide, please. Now, why do we make saccade? I think at the beginning we mentioned that our uh, our retina has a very non-uniform distribution of photoreceptors, and that's why we see very small portion of our visual field in high resolution, and the space around that are blurred. Now, to compensate that, we must move our eyes from one point to another point. Go to the next slide, please. Yeah, so every time we make a saccadic eye movement, we take a snapshot of the visual world, and our brain is quite capable to make a collage of it to give a complete percept of the visual world. Yeah, next. There's some technique to find out where the saccade begins and the end. One of the thumb rule or across the labs we use is that whenever the eye velocity goes beyond 30 degree per second and the eye acceleration goes beyond 300 degree per second square, we consider that as a beginning of saccade. And when eye velocity falls below 30 degree per second and acceleration below 3300 degree per second square, we consider that is the end of the saccade. Yeah, next please. Now there are many studies, like a few thousand or maybe more studies have been done in the last 25 years to understand attention, perception, learning, memory, decision making, conflict memory. You just name it, any kind of cognitive processes using the eye tracker. You can get a good overview from this article by Eileen Cowler, the eye movement, the past 25 years. Um, Obviously, we cannot discuss everything here at this point. Yeah, go to the next slide, please. Now we'll just quickly look at pupillometry. As you know that the pupil is a kind of aperture in front of our lens that limits the amount of light that would enter the visual system. Okay, so if your eye is exposed to the very high uh, intensity light, or a large amount of light goes inside it, you can burn out the photoreceptors. So it is a kind of reflex. That's what you call pupillary light response. That if I shine I shine a light on your pupil, it will shrink, and when it is exposed to the dark environment, it dilates. So when there are more light, the aperture actually reduces to uh, limit the entry of the light to the retina. Okay, next slide, please. You can skip that, but just wanted to tell you that the pupil is not circular across the species. Okay, and that has some kind of reason. Okay, which is good for their survival. And go to the next slide, please. Yeah, this is very interesting, although it is not related to any cognitive science or anything. The goat has a pupil which is horizontal, kind of horizontal slit. But when they put their head down for grazing, that eyes also rotate within the socket so that at any orientation of their head, uh, uh, the, the the pupil remains a horizontal slit. Okay, that's uh, very interesting feature of their eyes. Yeah. Now, why do we study pupil size? Because pupil, just looking at the pupil, you can actually, figure out the kind of mood of a person, even, animal. For example, the cat usually have a vertical slit of people, vertical slit like people, but when they're angry, their pupil dilate and become circular. Now, PLR or the pupillary light response is partly reflexive and partly under cognitive control, like saccadic eye movement, partly reflexive and partly under cognitive control. And we can actually have a lot of knowledge about this attention, alertness, arousal, etc. By studying eye position. Now, what you see in the cartoon on the right hand side, that standing in front of a mirror, if you do a simple mental arithmetic, say 5 multiplied by 7, and you look at your own pupil size, you'll see that uh, the pupil dilates when you do a bit more difficult mental arithmetic, say 17 times 23. Okay, so when you have more mental cognitive load, the eyes dilate. Sorry, pupil dilates. Yeah, go to the next slide, please. Now, I'll show you how we can actually use this eye tracking and pupillometry to understand uh, brain functioning. Maybe I'll just try to quickly go through a few slides. Now, we won't go into the details of this neural network, but I just wanted to tell you that the upper part of this diagram, what you see in the blue box, is anatomically connected with the areas which is enclosed by this red box. Now, because of this anatomical connection, now these two areas, these two network, one corresponds to the upper one corresponds to saccade planning, the eye movement planning, and the lower one is more related to pupillary light response. Now, given that there are anatomical connections, one can hypothesize that saccadic planning may influence pupillary light response. Okay, and that is what we studied actually. We asked a question that, go to the next slide. Uh, we asked a question, is pupillary aperture a potential biomarker of the eye movement planning? Go to the next. Yeah. So here, it's a study done long ago. Well, I was doing my postdoc in Vanderbilt. So we recorded eye movement and the neural activity from monkey. The area that we targeted is called frontal eye field, and the neurons in that area showed increased activity just before the saccadic eye movement. Okay, and the activity of neurons increased at a higher rate when the saccadic reaction time was shorter. As you can see here on the rightmost panel, when the reaction time was shorter, that means monkey made response faster, then the activity of the neurons actually increased at a steeper rate or higher rate compared to when monkeys made saccade uh, a bit late. So just try to remember this pattern of activity which is shown in the right hand side. Okay, the rightmost figure, because I'll come back to that after a few slides. Go to the next. Now, in our lab, what we did, we asked our subject to make a decision-making task, and the task was something like that. They observed 4 checker boxes, and each checker box has a mixture of cyan and magenta. Now, the proportion of cyan and magenta are different in different checker boxes, and the instruction was that any checker box that has maximum magenta color that you can see here is the target. Okay, and subject were asked to make a saccade to that target and not to those other 3 which are the distracted. So do you understand this task? There are 4 checker boxes. Each checker box is a mixture of cyan and magenta. As you can see in the next 2 panels here. So the middle one shows the eye position and the rightmost one shows the pupil area. Next, please.
So the internet went out for a second. Could you repeat the bit with the design and the graphs, please?
Okay, on the same slide, right? This one, the task.
Yes, sir.
All right. So this task is a kind of oculomotor decision-making task. Subject fixated and then they observed 4 checker boxes. Now each of these checker boxes were was a kind of 8 by 8 matrix form. Now each of these checker box had different proportion of magenta and cyan color. Okay, and the instruction was that the target is the one checker box which contains maximum magenta color. Okay, so that checker boxes were masked by identical gray squares of same dimension, and subject made a eye movement to the target to indicate their choice, meaning what they thought is the target. Okay, what they thought was the target. Is that clear? For example, here in this illustration, you can see the lower, so the right lower box is the target here, and they made a eye movement uh, to that target for viewer. While they were doing this task, we recorded their gaze position and pupil size simultaneously, and which are plotted, for few trials on this slide. Shall we go to the next slide, please? Now here we classified trials or group trials based on the reaction time, meaning the time between the stimulus onset and the eye movement onset. So that is what you call reaction time. So we group trials based on the reaction time, correct trials, and plotted the pupil size as a function of time. And this is where you see that when the reaction time was shorter, pupil size actually reduced at a faster rate, the solid line, if it is visible to you, and uh, the thin one, that is the long RT. So basically what it shows that when subject made a faster saccade, meaning when they took less time to respond, their pupil actually constricted at a faster rate. Okay, and the scatter plot shows the same thing, that the rate of constriction as a function of median RT, that black dots. Okay, go to the next slide, please. Now, when we plotted the same data aligned at the time of saccade, and we found this relationship, which is shown on the panel B, that is the rate of constriction, how the rate of constriction actually decreased as a function of the reaction time. Okay, so as the reaction time increased, you can see the rate of constriction also decreased. So there is an inverse relationship. Go to the next slide. Now we come back to that plot that I have shown you earlier. There is the neural activity recorded from monkeys on the left panel. Do you remember their activity of FEF neurons increased at a higher rate when reaction time was shorter? And the right panel shows that the pupil size decreased at a higher rate when the reaction time was shorter. And as you can see the similarity between these two plots, although these are not taken at the same time, but can you see the pattern here? It's more like a mirror replica actually. Uh, so that shows that uh, there is a certain relationship between the 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 FEF activity, or you can say the activity in the oculomotor network, and the pupillary response. So you can, without opening the brain, without putting electrode inside, just looking at the pupil size, you can have a good idea that whether the trial is going to give you a shorter reaction time or longer reaction time, if you can actually analyze it in real time. Yeah, next slide. Yeah, I'm almost done actually. It just did 3, 4 slides probably.
So as like within the next 2 minutes, if possible, that'd
Sure.
be great.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, we can skip those things. Although you wanted to tell you that the eye tracking may not be limited to the lab as well. You can actually track uh, the eye position of players and find out their proficiency in cricket. So, for example, this cricketer shows that before the ball actually touched the field, he was looking at that, looking at the ground where the ball will arrive after a few milliseconds. Okay, so if you can see the pattern shown in the left portion in the lower panel and go to the next slide. Here you can see this different pattern of eye movement. Okay, now O, P, G, S, and VS corresponds to over pitch, good length, short length, and very short length bowling. Okay, and you can see the patterns are different. Pattern of eye movements are different for professional, amateur, and beginners. Okay, next slide, please. Also, your eye tracker, the mobile eye tracker, the head mount eye tracker can find application in the advertisement. So the heat map that you see here, that is the duration of fixation. And from there, we can actually infer that the customer paying more attention to some particular brand based on their look or price or any of that sort. Go to the next, please. In the automobile industry, you can place the company can place eye tracker, just to track whether somebody is not paying enough attention on the road, whether their eyes are off the road, etc. Okay, next slide, please. I'll skip that, but it was very early study where uh, researchers studied pilots' eye position. So this study was published in 1950. Okay, and they showed that how much time pilots spend on different instrument. Okay, while they are doing some kind of instrument landing approach or at a very low height, low altitude. Yeah, go to the next. Now, based on this kind of finding, even in defense, you can say that eye tracking could point designers to the best location for control within the cockpit to extract to the exact location of the pilot where they look most often or they look faster for information gathering while on a mission. Okay, so eye tracking can help the designers to put the important instrument in a more accessible location where the pilot can actually look faster or more easily. Okay. So yeah, that's it for today. If you have any question, you can ask me.
Sir, unfortunately, because we're running really like
Yeah.
short on time. If anybody has any question, would it
You
be all
can
right
mail
if
me.
they could directly email you?
Sure,
Yeah,
yeah.
perhaps they could.
No problem. No problem at all.
Yeah.
You can share my
Okay,
email
thank
address
you.
to participants, and I'll be
Yes, sir.
more happy to have
Thank you
you.
so much for this wonderful talk.
Thank you for
It was
your.
really great having you here, and I am sure if anybody has any questions, they will let you know via email. Thank you so much, sir.
Okay. Okay. All the best. Thank you.